Hey guys, what is going on? It is Broken Nose Vlogs here. Now, in the previous video, I did mention that we were going to have a second video that was going to cover the other PC build that I ended up doing. This one was the Intel build, which only started as an Intel build because that's what was given to me in one of the transactions. When I picked up the Ryzen 1600 and the MSI B350 Tomahawk, the person was also like, hey, I have this Intel CPU. I have no use for it. If you want it, I'll give it to you for free. And I was like, well, sure, I'll take it. That's not a problem. And I took it. It was a, what was it? An Intel i7 4770. So a little bit dated, but it was a 4-core 8-thread CPU, maybe sort of on par with the 6700T that the Alienware Alpha R2 had. So for a very lightweight office style setting, I felt like this would probably be okay. The downside was I didn't have a motherboard for it, so I ended up tracking down one, and I couldn't find many motherboards for this socket type. I ended up going on Amazon picking up a what was it, an Asus B85 motherboard. Now the Intel B85 that I picked up was an Asus, and it kind of comes from an era where they still kind of put color patterns on the motherboards. The motherboards nowadays are generally like black. They have like RGB lighting and stuff like that. I know they come in white, sometimes silver, but there's not like a huge variety. When I first started building, motherboards came in purple, blue, black, green. It was probably whatever was the cheapest when it came to building the PCB. But as time went on, they started to do like different color versions. I know ASRock had a series called Fatality. Those were black and red. This particular B85 motherboard from Asus was black and yellow, so it's kind of like Bumblebee themed. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That will look cool in the case that I'm going to use for it. Well, it's sort of the same problem occurred with this motherboard. I put everything in there, and it fired up, and it turned everything on. But this comes from an era when they didn't have, the diagnostic lights, and I didn't have a speaker, so I couldn't listen to the post codes. But I did some research, and it actually seemed very common for these B85 motherboards to just not function after a while. I tried resetting the CMOS, resetting the RAM, running at one RAM stick. It just didn't work. And that sort of put a stop on that particular build, because I actually started with the Intel build and ended up going to the AMD build, which then also stalled, and then I just waited on parts. So running into this situation with the Intel, I was like, all right, what do I do? I moved into modern times, and I ended up purchasing a motherboard and a CPU for as low a price as possible. I did end up going new on these, and this did not come from the console money pool. This came from a separate pool, but I ended up with a Intel Core i3 12100F and an Asus motherboard again, though granted this was a B760M. Side note, I am a little disappointed that the footage that I had from the previous videos that I did of these builds, because I did shoot these multiple times because I built them multiple times, but I'm a little disappointed that I couldn't use a lot of that footage. When I was going over the parts list and actually bringing them out physically, Winnie was being a little explorer. She was shoving her head inside one of the cases and just being a little funny, weird puppy. So I was a little let down about that. So with that being said, we can kind of go into the build list here. I will still be quick and concise about it, but I will probably expand a little bit more on a couple things that I haven't talked about yet. So our CPU, as we already know, is an Intel Core i3 12100F. I did get this for a pretty good price. Most places were selling them for $80, $90. Newegg had a seller who was selling them for $60. It didn't come with the included CPU cooler, but that was okay because I already had a CPU cooler that was set up for the 4770. The CPU cooler was a Thermaltake Contact 9 SE. It's a little 92mm 2-heat pipe tower cooler. At first I was a little worried about it, but it says the TDP is rated for 95 watts on that CPU cooler, which was within spec for the 4770, which is an 84 watt CPU. Well, the 12100F is even lower. It's a 58 watt TDP CPU that I think boosts out to like 89 watts, so totally within realm, and that CPU cooler has been very good for what we're doing here. The motherboard is an Asus B760M-AYW. It's a Wi-Fi motherboard. The RAM was going to be Silicon Power gaming 16GB DDR4 3200 RAM, so it was only 2 sticks, 2 slots, totally fine. The storage, even though it has an M.2 slot on board, I ended up going with an inland 512GB 2.5-inch SSD. The video card, which I have not really talked about at all, was an EVGA SC Gaming ACX 2.0 GeForce GTX 1050 Ti. I got this GPU from a coworker. I didn't pay anything for it. I did repaste it and put it together, and honestly, it works just fine. Everything went inside of the case, which was a DIY PC, which I've heard of company-wise, but I've never used any of their equipment. But that was the Rainbow Flash F4. It is fairly nice. It's very compact for what it is. And then finally, in terms of power supplies, we have an EVGA 600BR. It's another 600 watt, 80 plus bronze certified power supply. Though this was going to be a lower power build, so I figured that this would be totally fine. So, just like in the previous video, I had built this computer at least 2 times over. The 4770 time, and then I held off until I got the 12100F parts. So there's a little bit of footage from me building it the first time, and then a little bit of footage of me building it from the second time that I will show you guys. But this case was fairly straightforward to build in. The only thing I wasn't a huge fan of was the side panel was a little thin, and the drive, like, storage rack, which there's only one of from what I saw, was a little less than intuitive. I wasn't a huge fan of putting that together. But this build was also fairly straightforward. Everything went together okay, and it was time to finally turn the thing on and see how it worked. Alright guys, so the 12100 build is finished. The 12100's in there. We got 16 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 RAM. We have a GTX 1050 Ti and a 512 gigabyte SSD. It's time to see if we're going to get a picture, or if I'm back to square one, like when I started the original build with the 4000 series processor. So we'll go ahead, we'll turn on our monitor, which is unfortunately just a TV, but not a big deal. But let's go ahead and we'll hit our power button. So we have lights, which we had on the other build, but we never had a picture. So now it's a matter of, is there anything going to pop up on screen here? Oh, hey, look at that. We are live. We have a picture, which means it looks like this build was a success. So now it's just a matter of putting this thing together in terms of setting up what we want to do with the BIOS here, and then installing Windows 11. So let's get to it. So after firing it up and making sure it worked and doing some tweaks, I decided to do a slightly more limited run of benchmarks using 3D Mark, mainly because this particular setup isn't too strong. It's a quad-core 8-thread CPU, though it is a fairly popular CPU, and then we're using a 4GB slightly dated GPU, which also has just had its final drivers released. I was actually running studio drivers for this particular build because it's not really intended for gaming. I wanted more stability, but I can throw our much more limited amount of benchmarks up on the screen. Which I don't think placed too badly. It was slightly above average, and this is also with no overclocking done to either the CPU or the GPU. I just left it as is, and it's sort of on par or within the realm of the Alpha R2, so hey, cool, but this has an upgrade path. If we want to, we can always upgrade the CPU all the way up to 14th gen, and of course we can upgrade the GPU if need be, and the power supply. But I'm fairly happy with how this particular build turned out. But yeah, that is my second PC build. I feel like this one went a little bit smoother than the AMD build, and it is my first Rectangle Boy CPU. I haven't touched an Intel CPU since, what did I have? That 11600. Granted, the 12th gen was coming out at the time. I just have read some things about the Intel 12th, 13th, 14th gen CPUs when it came to the CPU trays, that they don't work that well because they're rectangles, the pressure is uneven, things like that. I personally haven't seen any issues. The CPU temps don't get very high, and it's only a 4-core, so I don't think I have to worry about like installing a contact frame on that thing. There we go. Part 2 to the struggle bus of PC builds that I've had. This is literally the first time that 2 times in a row I've had a fairly more challenging than normal time building PCs. I think the last time I had something this challenging was I was still working with, I think it was a VIA C3 CPU, which might date myself. That was back in the days of Fry's Electronics. I think I had some issues with that particular build, or maybe there was a AMD pre-built that actually cooked itself. And that was from the days where AMD CPUs did not have an IHS. So we're talking many, many years in between having some, real hard build issues. Anyways, this video went on a little bit longer than I expected it to, but thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it, watching me struggle build PCs. But, hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Until I see you guys in the next video, take it easy. Bye-bye.